Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is the Sentinel watching over Geekdom, and welcome back to Sentinel Reviews. Today we continue our look at the Six Charley story arc of Big Finish with the Doomwood Curse, released in August of 2008, directed by Barnaby Edwards, written by Jacqueline Rayner. The Doomwood Curse stars Colin Baker as the Doctor and India Fisher as Charlie Pollard. Also featured in the cast are Nikki Henson, Jonathan Firth, and Haley Atwell. The Doomwood Curse is... how to start this? Because there's a lot I want to talk to. Actually, you know, it's interesting. This is a very average story, and I find average stories are the hardest to talk about, because a really good story or a really bad story, you can at least get passionate about what makes them so good or so bad. But with an average story, it's kind of a chore to talk about because, you know, it doesn't really elicit a response. But with the Doomwood Curse, there is definitely some things that work against it. For the first thing, I would honestly put this with A Requiem for the Doctor from Diary of River Song Series 3 as one of Jacqueline Rayner's weaker stories. Jacqueline Rayner is a great writer. She's written some of Big Finish's best stories. She wrote The Marion Conspiracy. She created Evelyn Smythe, again, my favorite companion. And she wrote Doctor Who and the Pirates, to name a few. But I'd say the Doomwood Curse is to Jacqueline Rayner what Planet of the Ronnie is to Mark Platt, or what My Own Private Wolfgang is to Rob Shearman. They are good stories on their own, but when you remember who wrote these stories and the stories they wrote before this, these stories don't just don't live up to that hype, that bar that those writers set for themselves with their previous works. And again, it's not that it's bad, it's just the Doomwood Curse. It's just that when you compare this to what else Jacqueline Rayner has written, it's not as good. And then the story itself. The performances are great, all across the board. Now, elaborate on that as we go through this, but the first thing I really like is that the chemistry between Colin Baker and India Fisher has improved tremendously. They have a much better rapport with each other. Their relationship has improved a lot, and you can really tell. And no, not you can. I don't know where I was going with that. You can really tell, but no, their relationship has improved tremendously, and they are a much more enjoyable duo. But then we get into some of the issues, because when Charlie first met the Sixth Doctor, she was being very secretive, because the Sixth Doctor can't know how important Charlie is to his future. Because she was with the Eighth Doctor first, I went through this. And that mystery, that aspect, from the Doctor's perspective of who is this woman, why is she hiding things from me, is dropped almost entirely. When The Condemned ended, Charlie made up this story about having amnesia so that, you know, she could continue traveling with the Doctor by saying she didn't know where she came from, and maybe traveling with him would jog her memory. And the mystery to the Doctor of who Charlie Pollard is, and Charlie lying about her amnesia, is brought up once in the entire story. Maybe twice. And it's weird, and it seems out of character. I'm not saying it is, it seems out of character because it's really unlike the Doctor in any incarnation to just drop a mystery. And one of my concerns is, and having listened to this story, one of my concerns with that is going through this arc is the mystery to the Doctor, from the Doctor's perspective, of who Charlie Pollard is going to be very inconsistently handled. Anyway, as for the story itself, it opens with the Doctor returning to an intergalactic library called Alexandria because Charlie was reading a book called Rookwood that the Doctor realized is 300 years overdue, or something along those lines. So they get back in time to right immediately after he checked it out, and they come across the Grell, who are these squid-like aliens who thrive on facts and logic. If it weren't for the squid thing, I'd argue they're meant to be a comedic take on Vulcans. And it's interesting because, and what they're, I can't really explain it without getting into spoilers, what the Grell are doing here, but the Grell were really uninteresting. I just did not care for them at all. And maybe if I'd done one of the stories where the Grell showed up prior to this, it might be different, but as it stands, I just did not care for them at all. I would actually go so far as to say that this scene goes nowhere, but as you go through the story, and even on a second listen, you get much more of what's going on here affecting the plot. So, at least there's that. It's not pointless, is what I'm trying to say. But anyway, what happens is, in stopping the Grell, the Doctor's copy of Rookwood gets damaged. And because this library exacts some pretty hefty penalties for overdue and damaged property, the Doctor decides to go back and get another copy. However, shenanigans ensue and they arrive off course, and then all these weird things start to happen. Like, as a coincidence, because this is the book Rookwood, which, full disclosure, I know nothing about. I should have researched a little bit into this before doing this, but it is what it is. Like, among the many things happening, they meet Dick Turpin, who was a famous highwayman and is featured in Rookwood, a more fictitious version of him. And all these weird elements of melodrama start playing out, and even Charlie seems to get swept up in whatever's going on, believing she is Dick Turpin's partner. And we get to spoilers here. Here's the spoilers. Again, the Doomwood Curse is very average. But yeah, here's the spoilers. What is happening is because the Grell in the opening of the story require logic, they were making a machine that would turn fiction into reality. So when the Doctor and Charlie arrive and try to get this book, these fictions start coming to life. Wow, that was very poorly explained. But this is kind of my big issue with the Doomwood Curse. It kind of draws elements from the Holy Terror, the Chimes of Midnight, and even a little bit Legend of the Cybermen. I hate using that one for comparison because Legend of the Cybermen came out later, where, we have these elements of fiction coming to life, characters getting swept up in the fiction and believing they're part of it. And it's just, my issue with it here is it's played very straightforward, whereas in those other stories, the Holy Terror, the Chimes of Midnight, Legend of the Cybermen, those stories give this premise room to breathe. A premise as weird as this, those other stories give time, a moment or two, for them to be weird. The Doomwood Curse doesn't do that. It plays it very straightforward. And it's just, so a lot of the potential for this kind of story seems a little wasted because it doesn't seem like they really do anything all that fun with it. That being said, the performances across the board are great. Some of my favorite performances to watch and listen to are performances where you can tell the actor is having a lot of fun. And all across the board, you can tell everyone in this cast is just having a great time. The fun they're having is infectious, and that's really what saves the story. It's also kind of neat to see Hayley Atwell in this, just because she also did an 8th Doctor story, Blood of the Daleks, and she plays off Colin Baker really well. A lot of the story is them trying to stop what's going on. And then we have Charlie interacting with Dick Turpin, and you can tell India Fisher is just having fun. But yeah, despite a great cast, the Doomwood Curse is really average. The plot is very straightforward and doesn't devote any time to just being fun like a premise like this should. And there is one other thing I wanted to talk about. The story employs the use of flashbacks, and I just don't think it's well handled. It's poorly executed. Usually, of the Big Finish I've listened to, which, by my own admission, is not a lot, flashbacks are usually used in the build-up to something. There's a point to them. Like, if it's building up to a reveal, for example, the flashbacks play sort of as these were the pieces. But other times, when characters call back to earlier events, they just reference them or discuss them. So, it happens a few times here. Early on, when the Doctor is trying to figure out what's happened, he thinks it's because of something Charlie said, and the TARDIS misinterpreted it. And, it just comes across as, why did we need you calling back to Charlie saying it? Because the Doctor could have just done it himself, and the point still would have gotten across. It's kind of pointless, is what I'm saying. And in the finale, and now in hindsight thinking about it, flashback might have been the wrong word for it, when the Doctor is telling about the real life of highwayman Dick Turpin compared to the Dick Turpin depicted in the Rookwood novel, several times it switches to other characters, presumably characters who were involved in the real-life account, and it's just... Well, the first time I heard this, it was really confusing, and again, it just comes across as pointless, and it's very clunky in its execution. It was... Because of that, it's just something I didn't care for. So I'm going to give the Doomwood Curse a 6 out of 10. But what were your thoughts on the Doomwood Curse? Start a conversation in the comments below. And join me next week when the Doctor will find himself on a familiar planet, and he and Charlie will meet familiar foes in Brotherhood of the Daleks. So what did you think? Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and even share this video. Help my channel grow. In the description below this video, you'll find the link to my Ko-fi, where you can help support the channel, and the link to my Twitter, where you can get updates on the channel and follow me. This is the Sentinel, watching over geekdom, and I'll see you guys next time.